on, everyone? Welcome to the Push Pull Podcast. I'm your host, HVAC Jake, and I'm here with my co-host, Julian Fimbo. How's it going, man?
Hello. I'm good. I'm good tonight. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, today we got two special guests. We got the founders of RC Mechanical. We got Robert and Clayton. Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Thanks, Jake.
Be here.
Yeah. It's our
Right on.
first time having two guests, as Jake mentioned, so it's pretty exciting. You got the four corners and good stuff. Yeah. So it's not 2v1 for once, it's 2v2.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thanks for coming on the podcast, guys. We'll talk about a bunch of different topics tonight and kind of uncover a bit more about what operating is and what plant operation is and stuff like that. So, we kind of been more traditionally like on the refrigeration mechanic world or apprentice world. So it's cool to kind of expand into the operating world a bit as and I'm part of that too. And Jake's worked at a bunch of different plants that have operators and that kind of thing. So yeah, so I would be good if you started Robert and Clayton, however you wanted to go back and forth. If you could just give us some background of your guys' experience in this field
Yeah,
and kind of how you got to where you guys are now.
yeah, absolutely. So Robert and I have known each other for over 10 years. We worked together in the city of Oshawa, municipal setting, and got to kind of know each other there. And then we actually worked together a few years later for Simcoe Refrigeration as refrigeration operators at different plants. And then through working for Simcoe at various plants, we kind of put our heads together and decided that we are going to start this company. And it's kind of been history from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Basically, between the two of us, we got about 55 years of operating experience between the two of us in different capacities, from being the person mopping the floor to the person running the facility, and to staffing facilities. So we do have a lot of knowledge, and sometimes I feel that we have a lot of knowledge about a lot of things, but not a full picture of everything. It's sometimes a guessing game when it comes to going to different facilities. And right now in our career, we're in multiple facilities, so you become quite the generalist. But yeah, our important aspect of our job and being there is just watchful eyes, interpreting what the readings are, ensuring your product is in good condition, ensuring that it's running safe, ensuring that you're being a good steward of your company's assets, which is the refrigeration plant.
Yeah, right on. So are you guys both A operators then?
Yes.
Yes.
Right on.
We have other trades between us. I'm a mechanic and building environmental system. Clayton is a chief operator, has tons of managerial experience, both with RC Mechanical and then in his previous endeavors. So
Mhm.
there's a lot involved with being a Class A operator. You step in between being a manager and being an operator. So that you're managing people, you're managing the facility. You could be managing multiple facets of the facility or just managing the plant. It just depends on the organization you work for.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely sounds like there's quite a bit of responsibility being Class A.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we both, like Rob said, have quite a bit of experience in different settings. Um, I I've been a chief at multiple plants. Robert's been a chief. We've worked in the industrial setting. We've worked in municipal settings. We've worked for universities and colleges. So we have a lot of experience, which definitely helped us, with starting the company and running the company. And I think it was a big part in our success that we've had so far.
Right on.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been approximately 5 years, just over 5 years. I think you guys had your anniversary recently. So congrats on the 5 years. That's a good number.
Yeah.
If you if you want to bring it to specifically more how RC got started and how you guys transcended into that, and
Yeah.
then talk about what has gone on the last 5 years and how the company has grown and how it's changed and everything like that. It would be cool to hear.
Sure. So I can start off, Rob, and then you can kind of add to it. So we started off in 2019. We started our company actually as a partnership. And then once we kind of got rolling and got a few contracts and started working at a number of locations, we decided to incorporate just for a number of reasons, mostly for liability. So yeah, we became an incorporation, and since 2019, we've gradually started networking and working at different companies, and met a lot of really good chiefs, really nice people while we've been doing it, which is great. We've seen a lot of plants in different capacities, whether that's production facilities, cold storage, education, and a lot of really interesting plants. Like we've seen some CO2 and ammonia cascade plants, two-stage plants, and then of course, freon plants as well. But they're all obviously a little different. So it's just nice walking into those plants and getting an aspect of what we're dealing with, and obviously learning new things. As Julian knows, done a number of plant tours together as well. The most recent one at Conestoga Cold Storage, where they have three engine rooms within the one facility, and they're all kind of a little bit different. One being fairly new with quite a bit of horsepower. So again, it's just nice to see all these plants, and yeah, we've definitely come a long way since 2019.
Yeah, and with that, we branched out from being, Class A operators running a plant to now, we're client managers. We've got a staff of 30. We have extensive clientele. We're doing a lot of accounting. It seems like the only time I get close to a plant now is when we can't find anybody to fill a position. So you think that you're in one trade, but you end up being in several in this role because there's no one else but Clayton and I to do what we have to do, and Julian, of course. But the education side of it, we didn't start off thinking we'd ever do that. Our clients kept asking us, every time we went there, they'd say, "Hey, do you know anybody that's doing any training? We need our guys to get educated so they can pass the exam." And we'd be like, "No, no, we don't." Clayton suggested that we try it out. And so we started throwing things together. We're not educators. We've done a lot of in-house training, but it's not our forte. So luckily, Julian reached out to us looking to get some steam time, or sorry, not steam time, refrigeration time. And
Yeah.
kind of the ball started rolling from there. So yeah,
Yeah. I didn't even exactly remember and thinking about how we connected. So it was the beginning of 2022, and I just got my refrigeration B operator trainee license, passing the exam. And then before I started running a shop, what I wanted to do is start doing operating, just working as an operator and operating plants. And then that's when I started talking to Robert on good old LinkedIn.
Lincoln, yeah, we can't be
That's
Lincoln.
it. I'm like, who's this suave young man? And then from there, it changed. My position changed where I was working, running a shop, and like you mentioned, people were approaching you guys about training, and we got to talking about that. And yeah, that's kind of how our relationship was born. So at the time you guys started to transition into training, we were talking, and yeah, we kind of put all that stuff together, and the rest is history. It's been awesome to be part of RC on the education side. I actually got my hat on right here. I got it backwards so it doesn't clash with my outfit. Um, yeah, so like we did a good number of things. We put together a refrigeration B operator course, refrigeration A operator course, refrigeration basic course. Gosh, my hair is greasy. And then yeah, we're continually running all those courses, starting a new one every couple months. So we have a lot of students through and some really good class sizes nowadays. And the best part is the plant tours for me every like 2.5 months. We go with a group of students because they're they're online based instructor led courses, but that's a great opportunity to come together with the plant, cover a bunch of TSSA regulations, and meet all the students and check out different equipment. I always get excited going to a new plant. I don't know, it's like just kind of a nerd about that stuff. Like I love going to an industrial plant and just like looking at the equipment and how everything is, slightly or vastly different than other plants. But yeah, it's been a cool part of the business for you guys to see grow and stuff like that. And it definitely complements the fact that you're staffing operators. So yeah, it's great.
Mhm. Well,
And
we wouldn't have been able to do it without you. I think between the two of us, we threw together 650 slides, and I had no idea how to connect everything I pulled together. And it just would not have worked without your educational background or educator's background. So that was a fantastic find. I think we were meant to meet.
Yeah, it was weird timing. It was like I had a lot going on at the time. I was running a shop and teaching at the Mohawk College, but I thought about it. I'm like, this opportunity is pretty unbelievable to be part of like starting training programs for, operating engineers and A and B operators. So yeah, I'm glad that I jumped in and said yes anyways, and we kept going and that the opportunity was there. So it's been a bunch of fun.
One thing I'd say is synergy too. As soon as we ventured off into the educational side of refrigeration operating, we found that the TSSA was knocking at our door. They were happy to hear that there was somebody trying to fill the void, and other people, the was word of mouth. So other people would start talking about us because they've heard about the course, and then they would require operators, and then vice versa. We would go into a site and start providing operators, and then they'd start asking about education. So it's worked out quite well.
Are you guys the only company that offers this training?
There's a few. There's one other college that's dabbling in it. There's a few other people. I think thanks to Julian
Yeah.
and our combined effort, we're probably the better uh, provider out there. I'd say one of the best.
we're biased, but
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
amazing that you guys are able to offer this now. Like, I never really knew much about it before. I knew there was some, different class operators outside of refrigeration, and finding out about the B class, A class, and all that stuff. And Julian kind of gives me little tidbits of what's going on. And he's like, "Yeah, there is no real course for it. You just go and write a license." I'm like, "That seems bizarre, like
mm,
compared to the apprenticeship side of things, where it's a definite. You go to school and you educate, and then you go train as an apprentice, and you go through and get your license and stuff." So, yeah, it's pretty cool that you guys are able to offer that. So,
yeah, and I just kind of wanted to go over a few things in regards to regulations for the plant, just for people that aren't familiar with what I guess a refrigeration operator is. So you have what's called a
Great.
Class B operator, which is required either a third class or a Class B chief, and a Class B operator, 365, 8 hours a day coverage. So you need somebody with that Class B certification at the plant for 8 hours a day, 365. Then you have what's called a Class A plant. So a Class A plant is 24 hour coverage with a Class A chief. And then you need at least a Class B or a third class operating engineer to cover those shifts as well. So that's kind of the difference between the two. Now, when you're kind of getting into being an operator, you have to start with your Class B. So your Class B is 9 months qualifying time working in a Class B plant. Now, TSSA has just recently changed some of these regulations. So if you reach out to them, say you're not working at an actual Class B plant, it could be just under the horsepower. You can reach out to TSSA and, they may still grant you that time. They're trying to make it easier for people to get their operating certificates because they're just not able to find enough operators. And then again, with your Class A, it's 12 months qualifying time. So there is a little bit of obviously work involved in getting these certificates, and of course you got to pass 3 hour, 150 multiple choice question exam for both certificates. And then, of course, there's the STEAM side of the operators as well, from first class to fourth class stationary engineers. So that side goes off volume of steam produced by either a steam boiler or hot water boiler. So it goes off the volume. I don't have the exact numbers for the steam side. We mostly deal with the refrigeration operators, but basically, in order to become a first class stationary engineer, you'd have to pass 20 examinations, 23-hour examinations, and get basically 2.5 years of qualifying time. So it's pretty extensive.
Yeah.
And just to touch on that, Clayton was at a conference, I think it was in the fall or late summer, with the TSSA, and they shared that there's only 300 Class A operators in Ontario. So you think of all the production plants,
Yeah.
Cold storage facilities, large places that require a Class A. There's only 300, and a lot of people are my age, so it's a great field to get into.
There's probably 300 plants,
Yeah.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
they offer a variance because they realize there's a shortage that they'll give
Yeah,
you usually they give you a year to get your Class A if you're a Class B.
yeah.
Right.
So there's a lot of people that are upbuilding positions right now.
So can someone with a refrigeration license, like a 313A, would they be able to, sit in on, they have to be an operator?
so you can get a reduction with your 313A in qualifying time, but you still have to pass the examination and then you still have to gain the rest of the qualifying time. So example, for the Class B, I believe they would give a reduction of roughly 3 months.
Yeah.
Your full amount of qualifying time is 9 months, so then you would still have to get the additional 6 months.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is a weird question to ask, but like there's a pay scale, like everybody's familiar with the refrigeration pay scale as being a 313A licensed versus an operator. Like if people don't know about it, or they're like, well, maybe I'll make less money or more money, or is it pretty equivalent or
It is all over the map. I think the bottom end would be about $30 an hour,
yeah.
and then the high end would be 42 dollars an hour, somewhere around there.
It,
Hmm.
it really it really depends though, Jake. That's for a Class B operator. Usually municipalities are a little bit on the higher end, and then if you're like a specialty operator, for example, you're working with like liquefied natural gas or something, it could be higher. So
Hmm.
it really depends. But I
Um,
can say as a Class A operator, normally those are salaried positions, and it's well over 100,000 a year. So it's definitely a good thing to get into.
Yeah,
and
for sure. Yeah.
back to the refrigeration B, if it's in a municipal environment, you're looking at full benefits, pension that would be comparable, or maybe better, uh, than your typical refrigeration mechanic would have. It's most likely on par, usually depending
Hmm.
on the municipality. There is good money to be made, or excellent benefits. Stability, they're not going to lay off an operator unless they're closing the building. So there's that too.
Hmm. Yeah, for
Or
sure. It's good to just get some information because I know people ask me questions all the time. Like, I got a young son or daughter and they want to get into something, they want to get into a trade or something like that. And it's, just even giving them the education. Like, I don't, necessarily force anybody to get into HVAC. I'm just like, well, we got many trades you can get into. And just even knowing this is an option and
Mhm.
having that knowledge and sharing that knowledge is cool. So,
Yeah, and we've met quite a few students actually, Jake, that have called us up and said, "Hey, I want to take your course," thinking that they take our course, they write the exam, and they can get their certificate. But then when we go and tell them, "No, you still have to get this qualifying time," it kind of puts a damper on it. So it's one of
hmm.
those things where you do have to work within a facility to gain those hours. So that's kind of a sticking point sometimes. But you obviously need the practical experience as well, right?
But with that said, if you work in a warehouse environment or a production environment and you become a trainee, it's a great way of taking someone who's maybe very smart but without a traditional educational background and then having them become skilled because they're in the environment already. Usually it would be a high performing individual on the team, say they're a forklift driver or a millwright or an electrician. Usually there'd be somebody like that who is in that environment, so they have gained their time, and then their employer, or they'll do it on their own. They'll go off and write the exam. So it's
Yeah,
a
that's
great
good
way to
too.
get a
Yeah.
second ticket or ensure that you get a solid career.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, in the food industry, it's a good transition, right? Like Robert mentioned, people working at a cold storage plant who are a forklift driver, and they have like zero on paper, mechanical background. We've had some students come through with that and have great success. And you meet some chiefs of plants, and they tell you the story of where they started. They were, packing or driving a forklift or whatever at a food plant, and then it kind of transpired into their progression all the way up to the top. I guess just like Robert was mentioning, from somebody sweeping the floor to, all the way at the top. So it's pretty cool.
I graduated high school, had no plans in my life. I was just kind of going along with the flow. And my brother applied for a job with what used to be the city of North York. Um, and but in the meantime, he got a job at Rogers. It's going to be a long story. Um, and if you're familiar with North York, it's got some ultra. Drake lives in North York. It's a really nice.
Right.
He got a
Nice.
call for a job to be a janitor, but he got a job at Rogers already. So um, he said, "But my brother's looking for work." And I said, "Okay." I showed up, and they said, "Hey, you're going to be mopping floors at Jane and Finch. You okay with that?" I said, "Well, okay. It's better than what I'm doing right now." So I took a job, got on full time, ended up going through the ranks, and about 7 years into it, I had enough of mopping floors, and I mopped floors into an arena, which happened to have a garden plant at the time. So I took that as my opportunity and went from there. It took 7 years, but it turned out quite well. But I think that's how a lot of people fall into it. They just happen to be in the right spot at the right time, and they get their qualifying time, and then they take a little initiative and write the exam. Luckily, my employer paid for me to take a course, so that's where I was able to study and write the exam. But a lot of people have self-studied too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always nice too when an employer covers the cost or part of the cost. I think like Jake, when we took our gas licenses when we were working in the refrigeration and heating, I think my gas too, the company covered like half of the cost of it. I covered the other. I think you had some assistance with your training on the
Yeah, my
fund for it, so
apprenticeship
it's
was,
nice.
I believe, was pretty much free. I just had to pay for books because I took my training at the Union Hall, and I remember I had to pay for. I'm pretty sure I had to pay for my gas too with my G1. G1 for sure. I had to pay. My employer, they were looking. They're like, "We need you to get your G1," and I'm like, "Okay,"
Yeah.
but I remember paying because it was the last thing I had to do. So
The funny thing too, if you go the power engineer route, if you go to college and get your fourth class and take your third class, my son's done that. If you go that route, you get a formal education, and usually the people you get are a little more control room oriented, like they're not hands-on bunch. Where I find that the people coming from the refrigeration uh, path have got all kinds of skills. Like you could have someone who's got racking skills, so they'll be happy to go through your warehouse, redoing your racking, or they'll be painters, or they'll be millwrights, or they'll do electrical, or they might do nothing at all. They might be just a refrigeration operator, but you never know the skills that group of six people would have running a plant. It's quite diverse.
Yeah.
And
yeah, oh
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, I've worked in many plants alongside with operators, engineers and a few refrigeration operators, in my time, and you do have the ones that are control room operators, where they kind of sit around and just waiting for something to do. But then I've worked with some operators that are just engineer class, and they know a lot of stuff. They know
Yeah.
that building inside and out. They know pretty much what's going on, and yeah, they're motivated to stay on top of everything, which was it was good. So
Yeah, and I just wanted to touch it. It also depends on where you're coming from, and I think Rob can attest to this. So obviously in the municipal environment, typically they don't really want you operating or touching much. You're fairly hands off. But then if you go over to the private sector, for the most part, you're really hands on. And it also depends on the plant. They could be getting you to do quite a bit. Now, technically, as a refrigeration operator, you can do all your own service and maintenance. You just can't do new installs. So anything within that plant, if as long as it's not a new installation, you can do. Typically, most plants, I would say, don't go that route. They get a refrigeration mechanic to do their work. But we have gone into some plants in certain environments where you see the refrigeration operators there and they're, taking a recip compressor completely apart, servicing it, putting it back together and almost crossing their fingers and hoping for the best. So it's one of where it can be a little dicey. And I know Rob, you can attest to that as well.
Are you saying my skills aren't up to task or?
Right?
Well, yeah, or you're working hand right with the mechanic. So you'll be
Yeah.
assisting the mechanic in a lot of tasks, a lot of troubleshooting. Some people are great with their troubleshooting skills, and some people are completely lost. It just depends on the person, right? Or the environment they're in. They might come in without any skills and then learn quite a bit while they're there. So it depends.
Yeah, I think that's a good working relationship to see like refrigeration mechanic called in to do something like you know, maintenance work or isolate something out, change filters, and then have a hand from somebody who's a competent operator who's there, who's putting the effort in and working with them and stuff like that. I think that's pretty valuable, and I've seen good success with that. So, but each plan is different, that's for sure. So, one really basic thing I wanted to mention, I'll go to Clayton for this one. It's just what is operating? If you had to give it a definition or describe what it is.
So I would say operating is maintaining a system, whether that be a steam plant, refrigeration plant, whatever you're dealing with. So maintaining the system so that the environment that it's controlling is at an accurate, temperature, humidity. You're getting the steam volume that you want. Basically, the end product or end user that you're looking after is where it needs to be. So if it's a refrigeration plant, that's just a cold storage environment. Those freezer temperature set points are where they need to be. And your cooler set points are where they need to be. If it's a production environment, for example, with a blast freezer, you're starting up that blast freezer and getting it up to where it needs to be and then shutting it down after, things of that nature. So I would just say an operator would be someone that would operate the entire plant safely and efficiently for the length of their shift. And again, it really depends on the facility and kind of what they're looking for as well.
Yeah, nice. And then if we stick with the refrigeration side of things, like we talked about the refrigeration B and A operator licenses. So to clarify, refrigeration B operator is the initial license, and then the superior license with more capability responsibility is the refrigeration A operator. So you talked a bit about obtaining those licenses. Um, could you speak to what the horsepower requirements are at a plant and how that works with the B and A operator licenses?
Sure. So yeah, anything less, so in Ontario, anything less than 200 horsepower, obviously the plant still has to be registered, but it doesn't have to be guarded, meaning that you don't need a certified operator there for 8 or 24 hours per day. Between 200 and 800 horsepower is a Class B refrigeration plant where you need a certified Class B or third class operator there for 8 hours a day, 365. And then a Class A refrigeration plant is over 800 horsepower where you need 24-hour coverage with a Class A chief.
Right on, yeah. And then the other side of the license, right? So in my head, I think about the refrigeration A and B operator as licenses specific to refrigeration. And then Robert, if we push it over to the other license, so it's called operating engineer, and then the order of that, it's the opposite of your gas license. So gas licenses go gas three, two, one. No, wait, it's the same. I get screwed up because your driving license in Ontario, what do? You get your G2, you get your G1 first, then two's better, and then your G is better than everything, and there's no number. So I digress. So with the operating engineer license, it goes class four, third, second, and first, and the first is the best one. So Robert, do you want to explain a bit and whatever's on your mind kind of about that license and the operating engineer license?
Well, sorry, let me just go back
Yeah.
to where Clayton was. Anything under or 200 horsepower and below doesn't require an operator, but the caveat is that it requires someone who's deemed competent and
Okay.
new
Yeah.
training.
They have
So,
to have a service and maintenance plan and they have to have somebody competent. That's you still have to have somebody doing readings. They just don't need that designation or certification, right?
mhm. And that's where
Right.
refrigeration basic comes in.
Yeah.
Making sure that people are aware that they are in a dangerous environment and they do have to follow regulations. There are certain things you have to do when there's a spill. There's certain things that need to be changed out on a regular basis, like safeties, and there's inspections that still need to get done, and controls that need to be in place and functioning. So, and like having evacuation plans and knowing what to do if there's an issue, which is where the basic comes in handy, definitely for our industry. So a lot of people don't realize that, but when you go to a hockey arena, there could be 900 pounds of ammonia behind one door, or well, two doors right now, until they changed, unless they changed the regulations behind two doors. And then there's a whole bunch of kids and
Yeah.
elderly, your grandparents are there watching their grandson. There's people with disabilities. There's people that aren't familiar with the surroundings, and then there's a lot of ammonia. So it's great to know that that there's somebody competent running that facility that is aware of the dangers. So
Yeah.
you great.
Luckily,
Yep.
I don't know any hockey arenas that have direct expansion ammonia systems
Right.
anymore, right?
Yep.
They're all indirect systems, usually glycol or brine running under your pad. So it's, I guess, good at least in that sense, but obviously, things can still happen.
For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I mean, when I was getting into the ammonia trade in like 2013, I heard there was two rinks like that in the States, probably just to be funny or whatever, because they love ammonia in the States. But that is when the ammonia refrigerant is actually circulated through the floor under the rink. So if there's a leak on that, that's gonna disrupt the hockey game. But indirect system is they got the ammonia just in the engine room, and then like Clayton mentioned, circulating the secondary refrigerant brine or glycol out to the floor to make the ice.
Yeah, I think they grandfathered them. I think the last ones in Ontario were the early 90s or late 80s. So we're safe that way.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Um, yeah, if we move back to operating engineer's license, that was some good stuff we covered. But with that, Robert, with that operating engineer license, fourth, third, second, and first, Clade mentioned a bunch of exams to get from the bottom to the top, let's say. And then, yeah, my brother-in-law, I think he's a second class operating engineer. Shout out Alex. So it's a great trade. He worked at DeFasco for like 10 years, and then he went over to work at OPG in Bath, Ontario. So a nice career out of that. But yeah, Robert, what's that involve and what do operating engineers take
You,
care of?
there's many colleges in Ontario, at least five. There's probably more. There's probably like probably closer to eight. Uh, that will get you to your fourth class. which is theory, learning throughout the regulations and whatnot. A bit about refrigeration, a lot more about steam. There's a few colleges. St. Clair is one of them that you can get to a third class with co-op experience, which will allow you to have your steam time. But for your third class, so that would be I believe for your third, it's a 3-year program. I'm not sure. It might be just a 2-year program, but if you count your placement, it probably is closer to 3 years. But then a lot of people don't move or progress past third class. That's one of the problems. And then a lot of people in the industry tend to stay in Steam because the only way to progress is to get Steam time. So it leaves them short in the industry. People stop at third because at a third class, you can be an operator in a lot of facilities. You don't necessarily have to go to the next level, and you can bypass half of the exams. So it's second class is amazing because you can work in any plant. You can be the shift engineer. You can be a chief in a lot of plants. And then obviously first class after your 20 exams, um, you're competent to work in any size plant in Ontario or Canada for that matter.
So many exams.
Yeah, a lot of exams, a lot of responsibility too, because you could blow up the pulp and paper in your facility in Sudbury, and then Sudbury no longer has a pulp and paper place. And
Gone.
half of
Yeah.
their people are gone with it, right? So, there's quite a bit of, or OPG or, a lot of these facilities, it would be a very stressful job, I'm sure. But,
And with the second class license too, if you had that, you can act as the chief, like as a first class, under certain conditions, correct?
and you also act as unlimited in refrigeration too. It's the equivalent on the refrigeration side of an A class.
Right. Well, that's fair. But in one respect too, right? Like depending on the operator, they could be a lot more biased towards steam. But obviously, I've met some really brilliant, second and first class operators who know a ton about refrigeration plants. So there is value in the right person for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Um,
there.
it's all that variety of basically where you've been, right? You could have been a second class in a steam food production plant that had a lot of refrigeration, so you would have learned both at some point, right?
Yeah, like the reason TSSA went to allowing operating engineers to work in refrigeration plants as well, because I think originally they did not. The reason TSSA did that is just to get numbers up so, people could apply for more jobs because there was a lack of operators and there is even more now, even though they've done that. So they're really trying to push for people to become operators. It can be an issue sometimes when you have, a third, a fourth, a second, whatever it may be, going into refrigeration plants, because technically you can work in any refrigeration plant as a second, but you could gain all of your qualifying time in steam plant. So you may have no idea how to actually operate a refrigeration plant, but you're still allowed to be the chief or an operator in one. So that can be an issue as well. So it's one of those things, right?
And there's also a
mhm.
preference too. A lot of people in the industry, they prefer refrigeration operators. It depends on where you go, but a lot of times they'll say, well, you sent me a third class, but I wanted a refrigeration B because they're expecting someone to be focused on refrigeration and know the environment. And some of the third class know refrigeration better than a B class, but most of the B class people are experience in that field, right? And that's the only field they can work in. So they get that skill, they hone it, and a lot of places prefer to have the B or an A versus a second class or a third class.
hmm Well, like Jake and I appreciate that, with the 313A license, right? Jake, once you get that, you're a journeyman, you know how to do everything. You're perfect. You got it all sorted out.
Yeah. Oh
Mhm.
Um,
yeah, for sure. Yeah. That's the misconception with our trade is it's so wide, the variety that you can work on. Like, you can specialize in ammonia or supermarkets or rooftop units, package units.
yeah.
you name it. There, I've dabbled in, quite a bit of different stuff, but there's some people that are specialized in, their own equipment. Like I know a guy that works on Aeon units exclusively, and he knows them in and out, and he programs them and all that
Yep.
stuff. But put him in front of a chiller, you wouldn't even know where to start. So,
Interesting. Might have to get his number because I have a few clients that have Aeon units and
oh yeah, that's the HVAC doctor. He's well known out in the industry there. He's an Aeon rep. I guess he works for a company, but they mostly work on Aeon units. And he's gone on a lot of the training and stuff like that. And actually, one of his colleagues is in my basic class right now. So he's like, yeah, I work alongside with him all the time.
oh,
So it's
okay,
cool. There's a lot of networking always. So
for sure, for sure.
One thing
Cool.
about I imagine it's like that in a lot of trades is you do tend to have a lot more freedom. Even though, if you're a refrigeration operator in one particular building, your freedom is just you're within those four walls. But I found wherever you work, you usually are given, the opportunity to do the work on your terms. Like you're not micromanaged. You get so much work to do that shift, you do it, and then you respond to emergencies as they happen. And nobody's looking to see if you're busy at this moment. Times you have a longer lunch, like you might sit there and have a 2 hour lunch today, and then tomorrow you might be working without a lunch and
Yeah.
freezing cold and trying to deal with a problem that,
Yeah.
take a day and then you're working overtime. But no one ever comes up to you and says, "Hey, man, your break was over 15 minutes ago. What are you doing?"
For
Right?
sure.
But
I can experience that. There's so many days like working in the field where some days you're like, this is a great job. Like, I think I'm pretty good at this. Like the next day you're like, I haven't peed for like 6 hours. I can't stop. This plant's gonna blow up. Like every day's
yeah,
different.
yeah,
I,
you're watchful eyes, right? You're keeping an eye on things, and if you're good at it, when there's a problem and who to call or what to do, right? And hey, maybe I have to start up another compressor because it's just not keeping up, or maybe I have to shut that down because we're trying to save energy, and I think the temperature
Hmm.
will hold. So I'll watch the screen and make sure that the temperatures don't rise. My suction's okay, and things are going along. Um, yeah, yeah, definitely. If you know your building and you know your systems that you're working with, you can become pretty skilled at it. And that's where I say I really don't know much anymore because I'm just going from one building to the next. So I'm like you become a generalist, but the problems are the same, right? You may not know that building, but you're there to pick up on them and ensure that if something does go wrong, you're there. So as opposed to a mechanic where you come in when the problem's already happened, right? But we're the guy that catches it before everything starts melting, or they've done their rounds and you notice, hey, the temperature's a little bit higher than it was 2 hours ago. That's odd because the temperature outside hasn't changed and the facility's closed. So what's the problem, right? Or what's that noise? You'll
Yep.
hear something, tearing itself apart on the roof, and you go up and find out that your air condenser is like the fan's broken off and it's going through your coils, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, and so I think there's the value in having an operator that's trained and cares at your facility for sure.
And like even without giant problems happening too, like energy management's a huge thing nowadays, right? So like there's been a couple buyouts of companies in the past, few years in this area where they've taken over plants and yeah, like talking to the chiefs, they're getting praised on, saving 30% of electricity over their first year or whatever, or retrofitting LED lights and there's funding for that, or realizing that the refrigeration equipment is super old and they could do a bunch of savings on that. So like that's a huge thing that we see too, just for efficiencies.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. We've experienced that quite a bit in the last few years, especially obviously, especially in the summer when at peak times and in the heat and whatnot. But yeah, load shedding that's happens quite a bit. One of our sites in particular, Conestoga Cold Storage, um, in Kitchener. They have I believe it's a 20 megawatt generator on site that they can utilize, and it'll actually run their whole refrigeration plant. So they can basically go, completely off, I guess, the grid in that sense at their facility during peak times and just run off their generator. So it's pretty cool.
Energy
Yeah.
forecasting is saving a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah, those guys are cutting edge. They're kind of like a model company, and Conestoga's got the different building layout. Instead of being wide, it's tall. They got really cool robots inside that can bring things from storage locations to a completely different part of the building automatically. So, yeah. Yeah, they're pretty cool. One thing I wanted to ask, I'll go to Clayton for this one, is what is a variance? This is going to be related to the TSSA, and what's a example of a variance?
Yeah, so you can get a variance at your plant depending on, I guess, the complexity in the operation. So, for example, I know there's a plant in Oshawa that they just finished construction on. That during construction they added a whole bunch of additional valves off of each receiver. They've put in a whole bunch of additional safety devices on top of what's actually required as well, because typically it would be a Class A refrigeration plant with the amount of horsepower they have. And what they're trying to do is go either path one, it's called, or path two through TSSA to try and get that variant. So then instead of running 24 hours and paying to have a Class A chief, and paying obviously qualified staff to be there 24 hours a day, you can now go down to 8 hour coverage because you have all these safe devices plus, like Rob mentioned earlier, additional safety plans. So the TSSA would then come in, look at the full scope of what you've done, your facility, the plans you put in place, all of that, and then they would then grant you that variance from there.
Right on. Yeah, so it's like rephrasing it, it's a allowance by TSSA to let a plant operate under conditions they wouldn't normally be allowed to because they have like crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's to show that they're going to be competent and responsible with how they carry out their day to day. So,
Yeah,
Yeah,
correct. Not every plant can get this variance. Like for example, if you have a building which we've run into a few times that's kind of been built on with various obviously direct expansion ammonia systems, there's really no way to get that variance just because of how many moving parts there is and how the plant was built. But if you start from scratch and you build the plant to get that variance, it becomes quite a bit easier.
cool. Yeah.
there's other variances that you can get to where you can have systems in place. Like a few clients have got interlocks that they can shut their plant down and take it from an A down to a B at night. So it's no longer an A plant. They can leave it for 8 hours, and then when they come back in, they'll turn the two compressors back on, and it becomes an A plant. The TSSA signs off on it. A lot of times they'll have a monitoring system that will allow them to, the TSSA can come in and say, hey, where's your records? And they can compare the actual operating of that plant against the logbook and the staffing. So it's a cost savings for the company. They don't require somebody there at night, so they do save some money there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've experienced it quite a bit at different facilities. Even in the municipal sector, they ran a certain facility as a Class B facility for years. And then basically one day they decided, hey, if we take one of our 7 or 8 compressors offline, it would put us under that 200 horsepower. And I wonder if our double pad arena would still hold ice, all year long. And sure enough, it did. So they were able to, go under that 200 horsepower and save money on qualified operators.
Right on.
Do you guys have operators working directly for you, or you're just like kind of recruiting them to facilities?
Yeah, so they work directly for us. And we send them to numerous facilities, basically all around Ontario. Obviously, depending on what their scope is, but yeah, Jake, they work directly for us.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think we're around 32 now, or just 32 or 33. I'd have to go check, but
That's pretty accurate. Yeah.
So you're busy managing payroll and 11 other jobs now.
well, geez, I've been working since 8 o'clock this morning. It just seems like there's never, and Clayton will attest to that, there's never a free moment where you couldn't be doing some work.
For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
But
We have a lot of
unfortunately,
extra stuff, I guess, going on as well. Like, sure, Julian mentioned we're going to the IIAR Natural Refrigeration Convention coming up
Yeah,
beginning of March. So that's something else we're trying to plan for. So always got something going on for sure.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. My
yeah,
wife's got a business too, so I help out a lot with that. And yeah, it's always something going on. I had a meeting at Mohawk this morning at 7 a.m. and been working all day helping my wife out too as well and prepping for so yeah, there's not a moment in the day where we're not not busy. So
yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
extra all the time. Yeah, yeah.
The
That
government
conference.
rewards you by taxing you at the end of the day, right? Sorry.
No, no, it's
yeah.
all good. Yeah, so for timing, it's about 9:30 p.m. right now. So Robert's on a 13 and a half hour day. That kind of brings me to the last thing I wanted to bring up. You mentioned there's payroll, you guys have the staffing, so there's people management. And you guys are effectively, running a staffing company, and there's a lot of filling shifts and stuff like that. So, just in general, between the two of you guys, what are the kind of the day-to-day challenges of running a refrigeration operator staffing company?
Yeah, yeah. There's lots of those
I'm
challenges.
smiling.
We even have one coming up this weekend, but that we kind of have to navigate. But I'd say one of the main challenges is just making sure we have operators at sites when we tell our clients that, we're gonna fill these shifts. What we've had a number of meetings lately with our staff, just letting them know, hey guys, because I guess step back a little bit. We have a scheduling app that we use, and our staff is able to drop the shift if they can find somebody else to pick that shift up. We have no problem with that. But the problem is if you drop a shift and nobody picks it up, and we've already told our customer or client that we have those shifts filled, it then becomes a bit of a sticky situation. So I would just say making sure that our shifts are filled and we're living up to what kind of we tell the customer is one of the biggest challenges. Obviously, there's other challenges as well, but that's probably one of the biggest.
Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
then you have 30 some odd opportunities for someone to make a mistake at a plant that they're not 100% familiar with. So you've always got to be enforcing and encouraging people to, if you don't know, ask. If do you need any more training? Is there anything you need here in this situation? And you have to be on call. So there's
Mhm.
we'll get that 3 o'clock in the morning phone call, which I think you got this week.
Yeah, I got that this morning. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Or was it this morning?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's a long day.
Nice.
So yeah, there's always an opportunity to get called, and I'd rather have them call us, and then, we can figure out from there, hey, maybe do this, and this, it'll be fine, or you need to call the chief.
Or don't do anything. Wait
Or
till you
don't.
get further instruction, which is happens a lot actually. Sometimes most of the time I would say it's better not to touch anything or do anything than to start fiddling around with a plant that you're not familiar with, right? So yeah, it's a big challenge.
Hmm.
In a production facility that, they lose a half hour, that's $90,000,
Yeah, it's expensive.
it can be, yeah, and it's a lot of pressure for an operator who's not their full-time operator. So yeah, if those chickens aren't being chilled, they can't do the production. So yeah, there's a huge problem. And I've seen it where like you're 15 minutes behind, and it might as well be you've lost the entire day. It's very a lot of pressure for our staff, and then obviously we have to support them. So that's a big part of it. And then we have to do client relations. Um, Definitely, one little thing can be a big thing if it's not looked after right.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake, is there anything else that you wanted to cover with Robert and Clayton?
No, I think that was pretty good introduction on the engineer side of things and the operators and stuff like that. So yeah, no, it was great. Nice to meet you. So
Meeting you too,
Yeah,
Jake.
nice to meet you as well. Thanks for having us on, and we'd like to do it again.
yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah,
We
yeah.
could talk forever.
Tell you more
So
stories
many
about
things.
Canyon Finch.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I went
Nice.
to school in Brampton. I passed through there a few times, so
Me too.
No, I literally worked in the worst part, but it taught me that I had to become something a little more than what I was at the time. So
yeah.
yeah, that life experience.
That's it. Right on. All right. Well, Robert and Clayton, thank you very much for coming on. Um, that's my co-host Jake, and I am Julian, and we'll see you guys next time on the Push Pull podcast.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
See you later.